it is very probable that our reform would not have succeeded precisely in consequence of what was the best of it, the senatorial supremacy. A body clothed with so much power was too repugnant to the prevailing opinion, to that vague and exaggerated horror of the aristocracy. Miserable prejudice, which opposed, as it opposes still, to the amelioration of our political institutions, they dared then still less than they dare now brave the unpopularity which is attached to the idea of a patrician. But let not good citizens persist in confounding in one common reprobation the feudal aristocracy and the patrician magistrature, where a conquering people, the spoilers of a conquered people, organize a feudality which, separating the two races in masters and slaves, assure to one all the rights and to the other all the servitudes. Such a regime, terrible abuse of strength, profound line of demarcation dug by the sword between two people, is an odious tyranny against which the oppressed cannot lance too many maledictions. That hereditary aristocracy born of the violences of the conquest, even was it modified as in England? Was it even at times sufficiently identified with the public liberties to have become their most solid guarantee? It is natural to suppose, notwithstanding that transformation, that a republican state would repulse all hereditary privileges of tribes and families. But a patrician and personal magistrature is quite another matter. It is indispensable as an intermediate and conservative body to every liberal government. Without that magistrature, equally placed out of the movement of the administration and out of the movement of popular election, the government would soon become absolute, whether it was in the democratic body or not. Besides, without repeating here what the civilians of all times have said in all languages, let us content ourselves with observing the contradictions which those demagogical theories present and their application. The progress, they say, consists in the absence of all aristocratical principles in political equality. But where is then that society without aristocracy, without political inequalities? Between the chiefs and the crowd, there must be necessarily secondary chiefs. What that reunion of secondary chiefs receives of powers favorable to the public liberty, since that power is detached from those of the government. If it is not a senate which you place between the chief and the people, you will have a camarilla of courtiers who will place themselves. You may prefer the aristocracy of the valets to that of the political magistrates. You may also confide the choice of bureaucratic, ever servile, the most hideous of all intermediate authorities, sooner than to an unremovable body of independent men. But notwithstanding all, at length an aristocracy, hereditary or personal, independent or servile, has governed, governs, and will govern human societies. Among the savages, the strongest, those who have killed the most enemies, and the oldest of the tribe. Are they not the aristocrats of the desert? In the United States, do not the elective privileges consecrate the aristocracy of money? And is not also by the most hideous irregularity that in several states of that fine country they do not yet treat as their fellow beings, the fellow citizens, the Christian in whom there remains the smallest trace of the prescribed color? And with us, those who pay the sense of elector and eligibility, do not they belong to the privileged classes? Is it equality for 200,000 citizens to be over 6 million of Frenchmen? And can they, in such a state, vaunt of having known how to conciliate the monarchy with liberty and equality without resembling those Roman augurs whose greatest merit consisted when they encountered each other in public, was the being able to keep a serious countenance in the project of Sia's aristocratic element has been reduced to its best Republican expression. It had been popularized. It neither supported itself entirely upon great property still hostile, nor upon industry exposed to too many chances to be a solid basis, nor even upon knowledge, which is not always the friend of order, but it supported itself upon a strength to which knowledge, industry, and property contributed at the same time. It was supported upon the general confidence manifested in several periods to arrive at their high positions. The great notables of the departments were to exhaust all the degrees of election, and that new basis of influence was more solid and above all more liberal than all the rest, since it did not admit of the privileges of the burghers. A larger privilege and of consequence less odious than that of the ancient noblesse, but which, however, does not accord any better with the Declaration of the Rights. Even in the Constitution of Brumaire, such as it was modified and voted, there were 6 millions of citizens, over 6 millions of Frenchmen, for rich or poor, all had the right of suffrage, if since by successive plebiscites, decrees of the people, they have perverted all. Who is to blame? You and your fathers, who would have it so, but not to those who desired other things, nor to those to whom you reproach the imperial monarchy with as much injustice as if you reproached the Constitution of '93 to the constituents of 1789, not to those who renounced not their dream of a wise senatorial and consular republic until after the repeated expression of the national will really and sincerely manifested, that will precipitating itself afresh towards a hereditary system and precipitating solely from the heart of Jacobinism, left to sensible minds no other aim to obtain but intermediate institutions proportionate to royalty and sufficiently strong to moderate it. Every Frenchman, in resigning himself to the sovereign vote of France, accomplished a sacred duty. Some men of Brumaire had, without doubt, more than resignation, but the honor to those who have retired or resigned without baseness.